So, reading the Nonprofit Impact Matters report, something that shocked me was just the number of nonprofits that there are, specifically in America, and the amount of ground that they cover outside of just charity, which is, I think, normally what we perceive to be what a nonprofit is. I personally didn't realize like the number of nonprofits that have affected me and my family and my life. For example, I went to public school K through 12. My siblings are still in the school system that I graduated from. And I worked and was born at a nonprofit hospital. I worked at the health system for just over 3 years through my high school and then right at the beginning of college. And knew that it was nonprofit, but never considered it a nonprofit. And then I also just liked that they kind of clarified the definition of what a nonprofit is, and kind of explained some of the nuances of that and some of the exceptions and like where organizations might be technically nonprofits but missed because of the certain like spending that they do or things like that. Some volunteering that I've done, mostly in my hometown. I haven't had a great chance to volunteer a ton since I've been in college, but I used to volunteer at Church Community Services, which is a nonprofit in Elkhart County in Indiana, where I'm from, that kind of has a bunch of different programs within it. So they kind of serve Elkhart County as a whole, but I specifically worked on two of their programs. So I worked in their Seed to Feed garden, which is a garden that then they produced food from and then put in their food pantry so that people had access to fresh food. And then I also worked on their Soup for Success project. So that was a women's job and life skill training program where women could come in, sometimes from an abusive situation, or maybe they were in prison or something like that, and they could come back and kind of step back into the real world and get that training so that they were set up for success. I also did some volunteering for Feed the Children, which is just kind of another food bank that put together boxes that got shipped out to different families that needed them. And then I also worked with the Red Cross when I was in high school. I started out my senior year by organizing a blood drive for them at my school. And then following that, I gave blood for quite a while. As far as working in nonprofit, I actually already do. I mentioned this in my introduction video, but I work for Bluebird Cancer Retreats, which is a nonprofit in Grand Haven. And that's definitely something that I see myself continuing to do. I don't really see a version of my life without Bluebird in it somehow. I've found a lot of community there. I've made a lot of connections in the health department within Grand Haven and Muskegon and even Grand Rapids. We work with kind of the 6 big cancer centers in the area, so it's been a lot of good networking. But it also just makes a lasting, visible impact on people. People come into our retreats a completely different person than they leave. We have them just under 48 hours. People check in on Fridays at 2 and leave on Sundays at noon. And the difference in those people is incredible. And you also just build really special relationships. You get really deep with people really fast. So it's not necessarily something you can get around. There's not really any surface level relationships at Bluebird, which I really, really appreciate about it. So I'm definitely attracted to the more health-oriented nonprofit organizations because partially it's a career interest, but also because I personally think that there's so much work to be done in our health system. We've proven that time and time again that our health system is just not what it should be. I think we can all name at least one experience with the healthcare, whether it's us or a family member or a friend, that we've been failed by it, or it could have just been a million times easier pretty easily. And I think that nonprofit has a lot of potential to make a lot of the change that we need to see in the healthcare system. Whether that is things like Bluebird that's kind of supporting the patient and the healing aspect of things, or whether it's more government oriented and it's nonprofits that are pushing for reform in the healthcare system. So that is definitely the sector that I think is most attractive to me as far as nonprofit.